Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, January 16th, 2014. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Gary Glass joins us to talk about new changes to the entry procedure for the National Homebrew Competition. Gary also answers your questions and lets us in on registration information for the Homebrew Conference itself in Grand Rapids. If you're new to homebrewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. You can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing.james. We also have a Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing Video page on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing. We're on the Google Plus, too. And thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon Associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of shopping on Amazon, think of us first. Go to our website, click on our associate ad there. It'll take you to Amazon, and whatever you purchase, we'll get a commission off of that. The good news, it won't cost you any extra. We greatly, greatly appreciate everybody who's doing that. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site as well. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes and our Android app on Amazon.com. We're on the BlackBerry podcast directory, and we're on the Stitcher app as well. And we're on the Windows phone directory, too. Check out our brewer's logbook at basicbrewingshop.com. In the front is a blank calendar that you can use to track your fermentations and plan your brews. And there's room in the back to log the details of up to 50 batches of beer. If you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our guitar case, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support. Thanks to everybody who's done so already. And protect your precious beer with one of our growler bags. Check those out at basicbrewingshop.com. Steve Wilkes and I are set to shoot a couple of episodes of Basic Brewing Video on Friday. We plan to talk about a very simple mead that I made, a very small batch, very simple, and my pineapple saison, which you might have seen on beerandwinejournal.com. It should be a fun day, and I think that Steve may make a batch of wine from a kit as well. It's been a while since we did that. We got a little bit of time, so let's go into the mailbag for just a moment. Terry writes in after last week's show on mead. Terry says, I just listened to the Ken Schramm podcast, and he mentioned EC1118 and that it can turn mead into lighter fluid. And I would like to confirm, never again. So there's someone confirming Ken Schramm's advice, staying away from that particular, I believe it's a champagne yeast for your meads. Kirby from Massachusetts writes in with this tip. I've really been enjoying the brew in a bag method as it allows me to brew indoors. Here on the North Shore of Massachusetts, I've been brewing in the middle of our blizzards. One aspect of brewing a bag that was always a little hard was rigging up the ladder. I think I found an alternative to that. Notice the attached picture, which you can't see, but Kirby says, notice the attached picture where I use an oven rack to support the bag on top of the brew pot. This also allows me to more easily rinse the bag with 170-degree sparge water. On the last two batches, I've been running about 78 to 83% efficiency. Anyway, thought I'd toss the idea out there, as this is something that most of us have in our homes already. Just make sure it gets returned to the oven very much cleaned off. Sounds like Kirby got in a bit of trouble putting the unclean oven rack back in the oven. And I imagine he would, because baked on wort doesn't sound like a lot of fun. However, I do like the idea of using the oven rack over the pot. And what he's done is he just set the oven rack directly on top of his brew pot and set the bag tied up on top of that. So I guess you could just push down on it to squeeze the wort out of it, and you could just put your sparge water right in that. So I'll have to check that out next time I do a brew in a bag batch. Peter in White House Station, New Jersey, writes with this nice note. He says, I play Basic Brewing Radio in the car, and even the kids like listening and are learning as well. My 13-year-old son is asking me questions about the science behind brewing, what the differences in styles are and what the different ingredients do to the beer. And my 16-year-old daughter asked me to explain the differences between sparging techniques and which I used and why. Every Saturday morning they ask me if today is a brew day and are disappointed when I say no. That's amazing. It sounds like Peter is using the podcast and home brewing to facilitate communication with his teenagers. Maybe I should start having my 16 and 13-year-old sons start listening to the podcast. I would have to do an episode about Minecraft, though, or Pokemon, or whatever those things are that I don't understand anymore. Thanks for the email, everybody. I think I'm actually caught up with email for the moment. That will change, I'm sure. Now let's go to our conversation with the American Homebrewers Association Director Gary Glass about the National Homebrew Competition, the National Homebrew Conference, and yet another round of homebrew legislation worries, this time in California. Gary Glass, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Hey, thanks for having me on, James.
Since we've talked, marijuana has been legalized in Colorado, so are things more relaxed around the Homebrewers Association headquarters?
It's funny how that's so much a bigger deal outside of the state than it is inside of the state. No, we're just as relaxed as always.
Having a homebrew.
Yeah, right.
That wasn't a fair question to throw at you, but what the heck?
I've gotten reporters asking me about adding marijuana into beer, and I just think that's kind of really the strangest thing that why would you be asking me that? That's just a very odd question. So I don't expect that to be a widespread situation here in Colorado just because marijuana has been legalized.
Well, there is a local brew pub here in Northwest Arkansas that has a blonde ale with hemp seed in it on tap, but that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about what's going on in June. Life is just zipping by. It seems like we're already. I'm already worried about things that are happening in June, and it's like 6 months away. But what isn't 6 months away is registration for the National Homebrew Competition. And that there have been some changes this year. And why have there been changes? What needed to be fixed?
Well, the last couple of years we've had the competition entry registration go very, very quickly because of demand has been so high. And particularly last year, we were using a new system, and the volume of traffic caused some issues, and the system itself had some issues. So what ended up happening was it was a very stressful situation for members who were wanting to register entries in the competition, having to scramble to do so right when registration opened, and then having some system failures. So the response for members is like, hey, let's not do that again. And certainly from our staff would certainly like to avoid that scenario again. So yeah, we're doing a completely different means of registering entries for this year's competition. We'll have an open enrollment period where anybody can come in and register themselves, as well as the number of entries they want to submit to, the judge centers they would be willing to submit to. And that they'll have a week's time frame to do that. So starting on January 27th and going through the Sunday, February 2nd. Anytime in that window, members can go in and register themselves. And then what we'll do is take those registrations and then try and divide up the entrants across all of the 12 judge centers for the competition, trying to maximize the number of entrants that can participate. A couple of other changes: it's only open to members of the American Homebrewers Association to register entries this year. That's new this year. And then we've also set a maximum of 6 entries per entrant for this year. Last year it was 15. So yeah, the all the rules changes for this year and the changes in the registration system are really aimed at making the process easier for members, less stressful, and get as many members into the competition as we possibly can. So we did add an additional judge center, so that added a capacity of another 750 entries that we can accept for the competition this year. So I think that combined with the reduced number of entries, even with that, it is a little complicated because even with that six entry max, there's still a possibility that it will be less than that. If we get so many entrants that in order to accommodate everyone, we max out at 4 instead. That's what we'll do. So the goal that is set by the AHA staff and the AHA governing committee competition committee was really to try and accommodate as many of our members as we can in the competition. And I expect we'll probably be able to I expect we'll be able to get everybody in. There's possibility that not everybody would be able to participate in the competition that wants to, but right now I don't foresee that situation.
So let's kind of step through this. Since you're limiting it to AHA members, they'll need to know their member number and the email address that's associated with their membership. So before they start the online process, they got to figure that out, right?
That's correct, and any member can do that on the homebrewersassociation.org website by going to the login area. Anybody who's having trouble logging in can always contact our member services department.
And so initially, from January 27th to February 2nd, they will have to provide their name and their member information, and then they're asked how many entries they would like to submit, up to 6, right? So do they have
Correct.
to specify which beers?
No, not at that time. So, at the time they're registering, we just want to know how many entries they wish to submit. And there is a caveat to that. There's no advantage to saying 6 when you mean when you're only thinking you're going to submit 2. We'll actually end up, we're however many you suggest you're going to put in there. So if you say the maximum of 6, and through the registration process we end up with a maximum of 4, you're going to get charged for 4 even if you only want to submit 2. So members should know, like, when you're registering, actually use the number you intend to submit to the competition.
So if they say, I might want to enter 6, let me reserve 6, and then they only enter 1, they're going to get charged for 6?
Yes, assuming they get all 6 into the final registration.
And how much is that for the entries?
It's $14
per beer?
Per entry for this year. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is that different from last year?
It's up by $2, and all of the additional revenue coming from that is being put back into the first round sites with the goal of providing a better experience for the competition judges, the competition organizers. Since a lot of the competitions have to, with 750 entries to judge, a lot of the first round sites aren't able to do that all in one day, and so we wanted to make sure that they could provide food for the judges if the judging goes over more than a day or 2.
And then registrants select a primary judging center that they're most interested in entering, as well as any alternate locations that they would be willing to send their entries to.
That's correct, and that's probably the single best way to ensure that you get into the competition is that the more of those judge centers you're willing to submit to, the more likely that you're going to get in. Because, as I said, we're trying to make it even across the board, so we don't have a judge center where we only have 100 people entered, and then another judge center where we've got 500 people entered, and they only get 1 to 2 entries. The other one gets 3, 5, 6 entries. Rather have a situation where no matter where you're entering, the entrants are getting roughly the same number of entries per entrant, and so that means that we're probably going to have to take people who are entering the most popular judge centers and shift them to another judge center. So that if you're willing to ship to another judge center, and you only select the ones that you're willing to ship to. But choosing being willing to ship to an alternate judge center will definitely enhance your prospects for getting in.
So could you see an instance, or could you see where some may be able to enter in more beers than others, depending on the region?
Well, it'll really depend on what judge centers people are selecting and how many entries they're wanting to get in. We're going to try and avoid having a situation where it's radically different, but there might be a situation where one judge center simply just doesn't have that many people that want to submit there. They get slightly more entries than another judge center.
It's tricky.
It is. It's enormously complicated, like running, because it's essentially running 12 different competitions and trying to treat everybody the same. It's a major challenge, and obviously we're trying to do things in the best interest of the members, trying to make sure that we accommodate as many of our members as we can.
Now, I put out there that on Twitter and Facebook, our Facebook page, that I was going to be talking to you, and I'll be peppering in some questions as we go along. Matt Whitey asked a couple. One was, it sounds like entrants may be asked to ship their entries to a non-local judging center. Do entrants have a way to opt out if that's the case? So can you not select a secondary
right,
location?
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, so you can select a single location. If you're not willing to submit someplace else, please don't select someplace that you're not willing to submit to. But it's entirely up to the entrant. If they're only willing to submit to one judge center, then that's what they should indicate.
Our own Steve Wilkes asked a question that I'm asked a lot: what's the best way to ship your beers to the contest?
I would say that the best way to ship entries, you mean in terms of carrier or packaging or all of the above?
Yeah, let's say both. Why not?
Well, the one way you shouldn't try and ship entries is via the U.S. Postal Service, because it is against federal regulation to ship via the U.S. Postal Service. It's not against any federal law to ship entries using a private carrier, such as UPS or FedEx or DHL or any others. Those companies have their own policies with regards to shipment of alcohol. So in some cases, entrants have used something like labeling their entries as yeast samples for analysis, and if you go online, you can find all kinds of means for doing this. But you definitely want to use a private shipper.
It's kind of it's another tricky situation, because it's kind of a wink and a nod, right? I mean, we are kind of skirting the spirit of the regulations, the internal regulations that these shipping companies have.
Right.
Or maybe you don't want to answer that as an official of the...
Yeah, and I'm not going to tell anybody to do one thing or another. I wouldn't want to make that suggestion. I'm just simply telling you what others have done. And it's the companies have these policies in place kind of to cover themselves, mainly to avoid a scenario where somebody is shipping alcohol to individuals potentially underage, or it's mainly to do with commerce, because different states have different laws about importation of alcohol, all of which really comes down to dealing with taxation, and homebrew is not taxable. So the laws regarding shipment of alcohol are really aimed at commercial alcohol. So homebrew is kind of in a limbo there, I guess. That it's not really what the laws are intended to be written about. So it's not entirely clear where homebrew falls in terms of shipment for competition.
And one thing that will avoid, kind of cheesing off the UPS and FedEx is making sure that you package this stuff properly, so that if something happens to one of the bottles in the box, you're not, flooding their trucks with beer. At least that's
always a telltale sign that something's not right when your package smells like beer.
I always tell people when people ask me, how to package up beer, I always say, first of all, line your box with a garbage bag, and then wrap each bottle individually with bubble wrap or whatever shock absorbing materials you can find, and then surround all of that with packaging materials, either crumpled newspapers or styrofoam packing peanuts, or think of it as the experiment in science class where you're dropping the egg off the roof of the building. You want to protect all the insides, and if something does break inside the box, that garbage bag, that plastic garbage bag, is going to stop it from leaking out of the box itself, and it may keep it from being returned to you if something horrible does happen to it. Is there anything that you suggest in addition to that?
No, I think those are really good suggestions. I definitely like the idea of you've got to wrap it in plastic in some way, because you never know what's going to happen to your package in transit. It's best to put that package, as you suggested, the garbage bag on the outside, so you don't just wrap your bottles in plastic and then put them in packaging, because if they break, then they're going to pierce the plastic, whereas if it's on the outside, you're probably not going to get glass going through it. In most cases, the judge centers would probably prefer to get newspaper as opposed to packing peanuts.
Yeah.
Newspaper is much easier to recycle, and packing peanuts can make a big mess.
Good point.
But other than that, just make sure your bottles aren't going to come in direct contact with one another. Wrap them individually, and then fill that thing so that nothing's moving around. And if you do that, it should your entries will be received intact.
In looking at the release that you guys put out there on the website, and people can go to. I can't. What's the new? I still can't get. I can never remember the new URL. What's the new URL?
It's not that new anymore, James.
I know.
Homebrewers.org.
I still think beertown.org, so that's how far I go back. So anyway, you can find the whole thing there. But you say that the registrants that participated as 2013 judges, stewards, or competition organizers will be given priority over other entrants.
That's right. Yeah, it's a way of rewarding those people that make the competition happen, and we'll continue to do that in the future. So this year's judges and competition organizers will get priority with registration for entries in the 2015 competition. We can't run this competition without our volunteer organizers and the judges that volunteer their time to evaluate all those entries, and so creating an added incentive to participate as a judge. We hope that means it'll be easier for our judge centers to recruit judges, and a easy means of saying thank you to those judges.
So the competition, a cap of 750 entries per judge center, 12 judge centers this year, up from 11, which means a maximum of 9,000 total entries accepted in the
contest. That's right.
That's a lot of beers.
It is a lot.
And half will be in the IPA category.
Well, I'm really curious to see how that shakes out with the number of with having a much smaller cap per entrant to see just how if those entries are more across the board or if they're more focused on particular categories. I mean, certainly chances like IPA category is going to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest. I think stout is usually the biggest because it has a number of subcategories to it. Those categories are going to be the hardest to win in. If you've got a limited number of entries, you should be selecting the best beers the beers that have the best chance in the categories that you're entering.
Now, remind me how the Ninkasi Award is chosen every year.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the Ninkasi Award goes to the winningest entrant in the final round. So this situation where we might have significantly fewer entries per entrant than in years past, could certainly affect that. There's I think we've got like 8 different backups to that. So in the event of a tie, based on points per final round entry, and those points are based on first, second, and third place. In the event of a tie, then it goes to I believe the first round points, and then several other potential tie-breaking categories. So it'll definitely be I think a closer race, much more likely to get a tie in that final round than in past years, but we shall see.
Yeah, in the past, people have entered dozens of beers in the competition to kind of boost their chances of getting the Ninkasi Award. This kind of changes the strategies and the odds, I bet.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So it's certainly challenging to get more than one entry into the final round. So getting multiple entries into the final round is always a big challenge. But certainly would have to be making some serious decisions about what you think the judges will make of your individual entries.
So whether you enter dozens or 6, you still got to be a good brewer to get that award. It's just
oh yeah, just getting through the first round is a major challenge. So yeah, I mean it's a 750 entry competition that you've got to advance from. And then you're competing against all the other people who advanced from the first round. So winning a medal in the final round of the National Homebrew Competition, no matter what category it's in, is a major accomplishment. And actually winning more than one medal in the competition, when you're think about being up against 9,000 other entries to start the competition. So there's 28 categories, 84 total medals, so 84 out of 1,000 or out of 9,000. Odds aren't in the favor of somebody winning multiple times, but we've seen it happen with people enter 2 entries and in the first round and end up with 2 medals.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so how do they know? When do they know, and how do they know how many beers they can send and whether they've been accepted?
Okay, so we will be doing that open registration period from January 27th through February 2nd, and then the following week, starting the week starting February 10th. Through February 19th is when we're planning on notifying everyone that they've been accepted into the competition. If we don't have if we're not having to do any kind of go rounds and everybody gets everything they want, then we'd probably be notifying everybody on February 10th.
And let's see, is there anything else that we need to say about the competition itself? You gotta pay for you gotta pay for what you entered, or you get in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. One of our concerns is that we would get people who aren't necessarily committed to actually sending entries, registering for the lottery, which can then make that lottery process take longer, having to go through multiple rounds if people are not actually committing and paying for their entries. So we've got a bit of a disincentive from doing that, and that you run the risk of being disqualified for the 2015 competition. So we really want people to be, in fairness to all of our members, to be serious when they're registering their entries.
Let's talk about the Homebrew Conference. You haven't come out publicly with how that registration for that is going to happen, but can you give us a sneak peek?
Yeah, sure. And we actually have posted some information about that on the AHAconference.org website. We are planning on doing an open enrollment period similar to what we're doing with the National Homebrew Competition, so that we can again get away from that scenario where everybody has to attempt to register at the same time. One of the things that we got from last year's situation, where we're sold out both the competition and the conference within a matter of hours, actually within a matter of minutes, was that for those people who couldn't be at their computer at noon Mountain Time on that particular day, they just never even had an opportunity to get in. And so by having this open enrollment period, whether or not we end up actually selling out the conference through that, it at least reduces that stress and avoids a scenario where people who just can't be on a computer at a particular moment in time, they're not completely out of luck. So I would anticipate that we're probably going to get right around the number of people registering in the open enrollment period as there are spaces. We have we can register 4,000 people for the conference this year in Grand Rapids, and that's an increase over the 3,400 that we had this year in Philadelphia. So it's a nearly 20% increase in attendee capacity that we've got this year. So it's really more a matter of reducing the level of stress. So I mean, my anticipation is that even if we end up going over the 4,000 limit with the registrations, it won't be over by that much. So just about everybody's going to be able to get in. With last year's conference, we sold out in I think about 20 minutes or so, and then we had a wait list, and everybody on that wait list ended up getting an opportunity to register for the conference. So
really,
even if you don't get in the initial round, there are going to be circumstances where people are going to not be able to attend the conference and want to cancel their registration. And as long as up to a certain point, as long as we have people on a wait list who are still interested in attending, we can accommodate those requests.
And when is the window of opportunity for the conference registration?
We're still trying to nail down the exact dates, but it's probably going to be the last week in February is where we're currently looking at. But so late February.
Now, how does the housing work? I mean, if you're registering for the conference, it seems like there's a pool of open slots in the conference, but it seems like is housing going to work the same way?
Well, it won't be exactly like the lottery, but we will be providing hotel accommodation information to those people who end up getting registered through the registration system. So once somebody has actually been accepted into their registration's been accepted, they've paid for their registration, they'll get a confirmation email which will include all of the conference hotel information, so they can then book their stay at that time.
Ah, okay, cool. We got a couple of people asking. I think the similar thing. Patrick Burns on Facebook says, a little off topic, but apparently there's a new law that looks to put the Southern California Homebrewers Fest out of action. Can you elaborate on what the AHA is doing to help?
Yeah, that is something that came up kind of unexpectedly last year in the California legislature. They passed a completely new homebrew law, and it was something that didn't go through any public debate. Pretty much caught everybody off guard, and I think what the situation came down to was that somebody had contacted their legislator from a home winemaking club, wanting to be able to supply homemade wine to a non-profit organization that could then, provide that wine at an event and sell tickets for it, and so essentially they're under the law selling homemade wine. So they made this change to the law that allowed for home beer and home winemakers to provide their homebrew to nonprofits as a fundraiser, which all sounds great, except that they made some changes to the way that the event side of things went, and they also included some verbiage about not allowing a nonprofit that is specifically for homebrew for promoting homebrewers to participate in this kind of activity. So essentially they were building in this situation so you couldn't create a nonprofit specifically to profit from homebrew was the intent. And it would also prevent. I'm sorry.
What kind of organization would be out there that's a nonprofit that's centered on homebrew? I can't even understand where that. Sounds like they just targeted you guys.
Well, I don't think that was the intent. Well, for one thing, I don't think that the committee that drafted this bill, and it was attached to another bill, so it was really it was very kind of obscure how this came about, and wouldn't have been really easy to notice that it was happening at the time that it went through. It was really not intended to block the Southern California Homebrewers Festival. It was based on what we've heard from the committee that drafted the bill. It was their intent to avoid a scenario of they've just created this loophole that somebody can now create a nonprofit that would then be able to sell homebrew. And so I've read it, and it's kind of logical what they were trying to do, but it's being interpreted by California Alcohol Beverage Control as saying, well, here's this nonprofit, the California Homebrewers Association, and they're essentially have this event where homebrew is being served. They're charging a membership fee to attend, and therefore this new law prevents them from doing what they have been doing. That wasn't the intent of the law, but the way it's written, it's not totally the interpretation isn't totally without merit. I don't think it had to be interpreted that way. So our hope is that we'll be able to work with the governmental organization committee in the California legislature and the California Alcohol Beverage Commission to write some regulations to allow for events like the Southern California Homebrewers Festival.
And Albert Frisk on Twitter asks, do you think the new law will prevent the convention from coming to California in 2015? I mean, that hasn't been announced where it's going in 2015, right? But would this preclude it?
Well, potentially, and that's certainly my concern. And I've been in close contact with Christy Alshoff from the California Homebrewers Association, and we'll be working together on trying to ameliorate the situation. But the potential is there that it would preclude a National Homebrewers Conference. It's not entirely clear that the situation with the American Homebrewers Association and our conference would be identical to the California or the Southern California Homebrewers Festival. But there's also the potential that this interpretation could impact the legality of homebrew club meetings. So it's still not entirely clear. Certainly it's like I said, it's one of those things where good intentions, poorly written bill, results in unintended consequences, and hopefully we'll be able to undo that with a regulatory change without having to go through and pass another bill. But if that becomes necessary, we'll do whatever it takes.
Every time, or at least here lately, I've thought, well, I guess we're done talking about homebrew legislation with Gary Glass for a while, and then something else pops up. So
it's never done. Thankfully, homebrewers in all 50 states can now brew legally, but there's certainly still plenty of issues out there that need to be resolved.
Wow. Well, this has been it's been very productive. We learned a lot. I can't wait till June, and we'll be looking. I guess more information you will post on your Twitter feed, and you are AHA director, right? On Twitter?
Actually, we're using the at Homebrewers Association Twitter tag. I was told that I'm not tweeting enough.
You are in the minority of the population, Gary, I think.
well, and because it's primarily, I know I am.
We don't know what you had for breakfast today. We don't have a picture of what you had for breakfast today.
Granola and yogurt.
See if
I'll be sure to get a picture of it on my Facebook page, which I never post to anyways. But I admit to it. I'm a social media Luddite. But anyway, I was primarily using the AHA director Twitter handle for legislative updates, and all of those went to Homebrewers Association, at Homebrewers Association anyway. So we just decided to consolidate everything under the Homebrewers Association Twitter feed.
Well, there you go. All right, Gary. I appreciate your time once again. We look forward to June.
Yeah, I'm very excited for Grand Rapids. For anybody who hasn't been to Grand Rapids, it really is a great beer city, and this is going to be an awesome conference.
Excellent. Thanks, Gary.
Okay, thanks, James.
Thanks again to Gary. Just be sure that, to be sure that you got that, the AHA Twitter handle. It is at Homebrew ASSOC. That's at Homebrew ASOC. Really looking forward to Grand Rapids in June, and I'm already talking with brewers and clubs about possible experiments that we want to talk about out there. So if you've got one you want to share on the podcast, drop me a line, and let's coordinate. In the meantime, if you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com, and please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Our Basic Brewing growler bags are available in our shop. Protect your precious homebrew and craft beers. You take it from place to place. Check out our support link where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to our podcasts. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. We've got combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time. And you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store as well. Our Brewers logbooks are on the store as well. Keep track of up to 50 batches of beer. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We greatly appreciate the support. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Weird Minnesota, your travel guide to Minnesota's local legends and best-kept secrets, and the Shave Well Company, a truly fog-free shower shave mirror. Truly fogless by design, will not fall off the wall. Boy, I need one of those. I don't know what it is about those mirrors that they always release at like 2 o'clock in the morning and fall to the floor of the shower. Thanks again, everybody. Remember, I can't tell who. There must be a scientific explanation for that. I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com as well. Hey, there's a reminder. I got to do something. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by our buddy Kelly Dodson down in Austin, Texas. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.